Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Anyreach Roundtable. I'm your host, Richard, the CEO of Anyreach, and I'm joined today with Eduardo, who is the CEO of Harpoon Jobs. Thanks for joining us, Eduardo.
No, thanks for having me. Appreciate that. Really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for jumping on and giving, some background about who you are and obviously, Harpoon in the executive recruiting space, but just as a kind of starter, can you give us a quick background about, your experience with Harpoon, and then we kind of go from there?
Sure, with pleasure. So I'm Eduardo, that you already know, and I'm a trained HR professional. I've been dedicating my career to HR management and talent management since I left out of college, basically. I started off as a consultant, and then I moved into the corporate world, so public listed companies, multinational environment. By the way, I'm Portuguese. I'm based in Portugal, and Harpoon is a pan-European company, but we'll get there in 1 second.
By the way, we couldn't tell, your accent. You sound so American, right?
I've been around, but yeah, I mean, sometimes you can tell. But yeah, so did my career in that kind of space, and 8 years back, I've helped the founder of Harpoon, which is not me. It's a French guy called Mathieu Duzièche, which I have the privilege of calling a friend and a business partner these days. And 8 years back, he decided to leave as well the corporate world to start his own company. I believe in the idea and its entrepreneurial spirit, if you will, since day one. And I was his second client, and I became a client. I was a client for 8 years, and a couple of years ago, he gave me a call like, "Hey, I'm back in Paris. I need someone to run the show. Would you care to join?" I said, "Well, I mean, let's talk." And here I am, making the long story short. So what is it that we do at Harpoon? We are a talent boutique agency, a talent boutique consultancy firm, if you will. We do executive search. That's our backbone, our DNA. And then apart from that, we do talent development solutions and organizational development solutions. So this last part, it's more like systemic approaches, strategy, processes, and so on and so forth. Again, in a very boutique-ish kind of way, it's a small team. We like to make everything we do to really to the needs of the client, if you will, and we operate in a pan-European space. So we have offices in Lisbon, Portugal. We have offices in Paris, of course, and we kind of operate in Spain, Switzerland, every now and then in the UK. Last year, 2024, we did a project in the US. I was in New York last July to deliver this. But those are very kind of ad hoc things, because really where we are based, it's over here in Europe. So yeah, that's who I am. I'm a big Lego fan, as you probably can tell by the background, and I'm a guitar player, which I would love to do it as my first. My go-to job, if you will, but I cannot. So this is who I am in a nutshell.
Well, we're gonna have to ask you to play the guitar at the end of this podcast.
Oh Jesus, I have it downstairs. I don't know if that's gonna be an easy one. Maybe in post-production you can do that magic trick.
Exactly. I was gonna say the Legos behind you are pretty advanced. They're not your basic Legos, right?
Those are Technique. So I'm a big fan of the brand since I was a kid. Yeah. I think they probably, I don't know if we're going to head in that direction, but one thing I really love is to train critical thinking. And this thing over there, it really trains you to think critically since an early stage.
Got it. Well, awesome. Thanks for sharing that background. So as we kind of think about massive changes in how companies approach talent, right, especially around AI, automation, and hybrid work, from your perspective, what are some of the biggest challenges organizations face in adapting this new era of work?
Right. Look, like everything in life, perhaps it all boils down to mindset. Sometimes I get the privilege to, be a keynote speaker in these kind of topics. And I always quote the Ludites kind of movement that happened during the Industrial Revolution in the UK back in the day. And they were kind of setting industries on fire and factories on fire because they were afraid of the change. And I always say the same thing, which is it's pointless to try to stop the wind with your own hands. So there's an element of mindset, which basically translates into the use cases. People just don't see the use cases. They are not, their brain is not wired to see the what if, right? And if I need to kind of isolate two reasons, I would say twofold. One is the use cases, the other one is the data infrastructure. And whereas the use case is much more, it has much more to do with the mindset, as I was saying, being able to think, hey, what if? I don't need to do this. Is there any technology that would help me solving this problem? Is there any technology that would help me, being free of admin and transactional work? Is there any technology that would make possible not to invest so much time in certain things? So asking those implication questions, for lack of a better word. I sometimes get people like, even in my own team, and they're like, hey, if I use ChatGPT or any other large language model, will I be cheating? No, for God's sake, no. It's like, just think of it like your team on steroids. You need to, when you delegate to humans, you're not cheating, right? And you just need to make the right pitch, the right briefing, ask the right questions. And then you need to just, again, using that critical thinking skills to analyze what comes out of the team. It's the same thing, but it's instead of humans, it's AI, and which basically means it's your team on steroids. So that's element number one. Then I also talked about the data infrastructure, and I see a lot of companies. Frankly speaking, we do have the technology. I'm not an AI expert, but I've been along enough to learn that there is some cool technology over there, even in terms of not only LLMs, but also the more into the analytical side of AI. So if you want to do really advanced analytics, predictive analysis and stuff like that, there's already a lot of solutions in that space. But some companies, they just don't have the data infrastructure. They don't have everything tidy enough to really build that layer on top of that, to stack that thing on top of the data and be able to extract really relevant information. But and because they don't have it, I still see, I'm thinking of a conversation I had probably a couple of months ago with a large company, in fact, and they were like, yeah, I don't have that, and it's going to be, it's a very large company. It's just going to be a mess to do that thing from scratch. And boy, it's like that Japanese saying. I think it's a Japanese saying. The best time to plant a tree would have been 20 years ago. The next best time is now. So, I mean, don't wait for tomorrow. I mean, it's a mess. Your data infrastructure, just roll up your sleeves and start doing it, because if not, somebody else will do. So it's really which probably has to do with mindset as well, which is people are just discouraged of, hey, there's a lot of data spread around in different systems, and then you look at the data set and then you have Mr. with a dot and Mr. without a dot, and the whole thing is a mess. You just get it done, because the sooner you start doing that, the better it will be for you.
Right. Yeah, I think you bring up two good points. The first one is a use case, or seeing the future, as you mentioned, the what ifs. And there's that one quote by Henry Ford. It's like, if I asked my customers what they wanted, they would just ask for a faster horse, right?
Right, absolutely.
Like, they don't know what a car is, right? But it's like, hey, this is actually the future now. Obviously,
exactly.
Cars are ubiquitous and they're everywhere. And on the data piece, it's so important, I think, especially if you want the output of AI to be efficient, be productive, and so on and so forth. You got to feed it the right information, right?
Absolutely.
And I've seen this plenty of times, whether it's a bad prompt or the data's not clean. Yeah. And when someone tries like ChatGPT, all of a sudden they're like, wait a minute, this is not what I expected. It's not as good enough. And it's, well, you kind of have to put in the work to make it work, just like as you mentioned, a real employee, right?
Exactly. That's the thing. It's not that different. With a real person, you also need to give them a really good prompt.
Yeah. And you know what's really interesting about that use case is, most folks think managers don't do anything. CEOs, you just collect a big paycheck, you're not really doing a job. And then once you start using AI and realize you're not getting the right output from AI, it's like, well, welcome to being a manager, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
True.
So, when we think about Harpoon's business being more focused on kind of executive recruitment, right? It's very different than I would say like the high volume play of recruiting, right? If you're looking for customer service agents and so forth, you just want to push it out to as many people as possible. Quality probably doesn't matter as much, right? So as you think about your business and kind of your approach there, how do you see that evolving and how you approach, a more maybe lower volume but higher quality talent pool
Right.
with AI?
Right. So probably again twofold. I don't want to be quoted as the twofold guy, but one is really again getting rid of all the admin and transactional work, and probably just. And I know you're doing it yourself, like booking interviews and just screening for possible candidates and really trying to find those common slots in the agenda, which can really be a mess these days. I mean, the whole thing can be really automated. It's like as simple as giving the right prompt again, and all of a sudden, boom, there you go. You have an interview schedule, and off we go. And the same thing goes to. A lot of what we do is because we have already built a network, but sometimes we still need to, go on LinkedIn and call people and get the right people, the right contacts. But that whole thing, I'm sure it can be automated. I'm not sure exactly how the whole bits and bobs and the nitty gritty of all that. But again, implication question: can this be automated? I'm sure it can. So there's one element which is getting rid of all that and just focusing on that layer where you really add value. Where from my perspective, it still needs to be a human being doing, which is, filling that connection and making that last call, the last decision. And when hiring at senior ranking officers for clients, you still need to do that. You just cannot rely solely on AI, but you surely can get rid of a lot of admin stuff over there. The other thing, again, twofold. The other thing is the element of assessing some skills and capabilities. So there's a lot of third-party apps over there, and frankly speaking, we are using a few of those that are very good in terms of launching one of those assessments. You just hit a link, it fires a few questions, and they are really getting great at not following the whole script. They jump from question to question based on the way you've answered the previous one, because it really relies on big data and advanced analytics to understand who you are in terms of your competency set, of your competency, of your skills, if you will. So in that sense, there's a lot of great tools appearing out there that really bring those extra data points for you to make the decision. So it's not only about that connection, as I was saying, at the very last mile of the recruitment. You still need to engage, you still need to have that human touch, but then you mix that, you blend that with data coming from millions of data points of people that were assessed with those tools, and you can really kind of fine tune this is the best candidate because I've gathered a lot of information from my human skills and from my AI partners and pals to make that last call. And in the end, I mean, it's humans making decisions, I guess. But there's a lot of help you can get from AI, even for recruiting high-ranking senior officials.
Right, right. I mean, I think, when it boils down to how AI can improve efficiencies, like you mentioned, removing a lot of the manual bottlenecks of admin work, and then
Yeah.
even deeper insights to like comb through all this information and say, using an LLM to pull in all these data points and be like, okay, here's a signal on a specific individual. Here's
Exactly.
what I'm going to target. So, super interesting kind of your perspective on that.
Yeah, and
And
and,
then
and that just to build up on what you're saying, I don't see. I'm not able to predict the future, of course, but I can kind of hypothesize of a future where these machines will even read your micro expressions and they can really challenge you in your perspective in the way they bring extra data, extra insights for you to make the decision. So I mean, again, science fiction for me, but I can really hypothesize with a future such as this one.
Well, what's interesting about that talking point is, I think, as founders, CEOs, and so forth, we actually already do that, right? Whether it's hiring an
Yeah, yeah,
employee,
yeah.
talking to a customer, on my side, as we're trying to get to product market fit, if you will, we can ask the customer, hey, how do you like the product? Right? And they'd be like, oh,
Right.
it's great. But then their facial expression shows that they're not
Yes.
interested at all, right? And so that nuance is very important because you could just take the text like an LLM would. That's great. Oh, it's very positive. They love your product. But in reality, obviously with the human interaction, you realize actually they don't really like it. They're just trying to be nice
Yeah.
by saying it's great, but they actually
Yeah.
internally don't actually like it, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's definitely important. And you did mention another point about the hybrid approach, right? Like you can use AI and tooling for probably like 80% of the work, but you still need a human, right? A human in
Yeah.
the loop, if you will, to verify the output, to train the model maybe even more. As you kind of think about adopting AI and how kind of humans fit into the picture, how do you think about that broadly from a general purpose perspective, and more specifically to your core business for like recruiting?
Right. Look, I mean, it's a people's business. It's really. I'm a strong believer that it's an 8 billion people community that we've built around the world, and the fact that there's a computer instead of not existing computers. The fact that there are cars instead of just faster horses, as you were saying. The fact that there are mobile phones and stuff like that. I mean, it's because humans got in touch with other humans. We kind of spotted a problem to solve, and Bob's your uncle. You're here with necessity is the mother of all inventions. We just created a phone. We just created a computer. So it's really. I mean, again, perhaps I'm biased because again, I've been working in HR and talent management throughout all my career, but I really think that this is a people's world. And we are, for the better or the worse, we are still the last, decision makers. But really, because I'm a believer in the human element of reality, if you will, I also happen to think that the more we dedicate our time to stuff that is really important, the better. And doing admin stuff, it's not the best usage of your time. Doing transactional work, and it's not the best usage of your time. And I also happen to think that time is the only currency you have, which is it's worth something. You may have as many dollars, as many euros, as many yens as you want in your bank account. You'll lose it for inflation. So it's the only currency you have that's actually of any value. It's your time. You don't want to spend it, and you don't want to spoil it doing stuff that a machine can do. And thank God, again, necessity is the mother of all inventions. Thank God we have a lot of tools these days that can just, you can just get rid of all that transactional admin, non-added value stuff, and focus on what matters. And for me, people might think otherwise, but I'm still a believer in this. For me, what matters is really building those human connections. That's where you get the purpose in your life. When we are 80 and when we look back, I mean, it's those human connections and those kind of things that will really make our lives worthwhile. it's not the time we spend, just crunching numbers and going through databases and booking calls and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, that's my take on that.
I mean, to your point, definitely the way we see it is like AI is a tool,
Yeah.
right? And a tool is to augment humans, and augment in many different ways, like do the job better, or as you mentioned, saving time and your currency.
Yeah.
So that folks can actually focus on things that are more creative, more strategic, more
Yes.
critical, right? Maybe there's a joke here, once we get full AGI, you can build more Legos, right, in the back. Spend time on things you actually want to do, right? So, yeah, totally in agreement there. And it's pretty amazing seeing kind of the shift in how I think initially when AI was introduced, there's this big fear of like, hey, it's going to replace our jobs. And I think there's a going theme now that like, no, it's actually an AI hybrid thing. And AI, as you mentioned, is a steroid. Your team on steroids, right?
Absolutely.
It just gives folks back the time that they should be using for more important things in life.
Yeah, and again, going to the like science fiction arena here once again, I don't see the future. I cannot predict the future, but I can think based on hypothesis, it's like it's not. I hypothesize with a world where you are not replaced, you are really augmented, but like physically augmented. You see, stuff happening these days like Neuralink and stuff like that. I mean, someday, one of these days, AI will be implanted in your brain. It will not even be something that you need to be afraid of. It will be yourself.
Yeah. You brought up a funny thing about you can't predict the future. I actually have a superpower where I actually can't predict the future, and let me tell you how awesome it is. So I know I'm going to eat for lunch in the next hour. It's going to be chicken and rice. So there you go. But I have a short-term superpower of knowing the future an hour ahead of time, but I wouldn't really call it a superpower. And so, about Harpoon, there's, I would say, like a multi-sided marketplace, right? You have obviously your team, the recruitment team, if you will, and then you have candidates, right? And then you have your enterprise clients that are looking for these candidates, which you're kind of being a middleman for.
Yeah.
As you think about outside of the recruitment user, if you will, from the candidate to your enterprise clients, how are they thinking about AI, and how is that adoption curve, if you will, and knowledge of where AI is today? And are you seeing any sort of insights around those two other kind of users or players with your business?
Well, look, I still see a lot of fogginess, for lack of a better word. So again, back to the use cases and the data infrastructure, I see a lot of companies that they're still puzzled with what am I going to do with this. So there are more questions than answers these days, which I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. But there's a lot of companies out there that even big companies that are still quite intrigued, quite puzzled with what to do with this. But one thing for me is that starts to make sense is that with AI and the kind of how robust these tools are getting, you can really think of something which is much more decentralized. Not only within companies. So I'm thinking of talent management within a company. Back in the day, it used to be very top-down, hierarchical, command and control, centralized. Here's your training plan, go for it, off we go. These days, you can really think of a kind of a decentralized way of managing this. And you get to see a lot of companies saying that, own your future, own your development, own your own thing. It's like treating people as, these are my words, treating people as adults. Just find your own thing, find what makes you happy, and just pursue that. And with AI, and you see a lot of tools these days that really make that possible for employees to, at the distance of a click with their phones or their laptops or whatever, just say, hey, I want to become the CFO in the next 7 or 8 years. What should I do? And that thing will just, fire up a lot of recommendations and will kind of follow up on you along the journey, which is very cool. The same thing happens if you zoom out. So not inside the company anymore, and I'm thinking about what we do as a company, Harpoon. And what we do basically, we find companies that want to recruit or that want to solve a particular talent dilemma of them, and then we will find the solution. But actually, with this, we can flip it around, and with this, we can really look at talent pools out there, and be like curators of their own development and their own careers. In between different companies. So we can, I'm just early days hypothesizing again, but it's really, with this thing, and if there's a common denominator underpinning the whole thing, I would say it's decentralization. It's really that ability not to be in control of everything, but like letting people have the reins of their own development, and you can plug that. You can plug into that as a consultancy, as we are Harpoon, and kind of, again, back to those implication questions. What if we would, instead of just finding the customer with a particular need, hey, I need a CFO, and then finding the candidates, why don't we tap into those that 8 billion Homo sapiens talent pool and curate beautiful paths for their careers, and you kind of play the middleman, but in a much more dynamic way, decentralized way perhaps. You're just connecting the dots, which would be fairly impossible back in the days of paper resumes and stuff like that. But hey, guess what? It is possible now, powered and leveraged by AI and technology.
Right. Yeah, you actually brought up a good point on like personal development using AI to kind of think about how to plan for the future. A little hack for the audience: GPT 4.1 was recently released, and it included memory. So it remembers all your historical ChatGPT conversations, and you can actually prompt it and say, "What do you think about me as a professional? Give me a very deep analysis, right? And tell me what jobs or futures that you foresee based on my talents, right?" And so I'll pull up all your chat history and be like, this is the type of person you are, and this is the type of job you have. I thought that was a little fun exercise. I actually did that for myself, and I shared it with the team, like, hey, if you guys are wondering how I operate, well, here's what GPT thinks based on the chats I've had, right? And on the second note, this is more of a little fun fact. The first version of AI for recruiting, when you have the ATS systems where people would apply with their resumes, there was actually a very dumb AI that would look at keywords for a job description, right? And if you didn't meet the keywords or specific kind of companies, maybe working at Facebook or whatever you want to call it, they would completely just filter you out. You would never make it past the screening process, right? And I learned that the way people hack that, candidates hacked it from companies, is in their resume, they would actually have a whole appendix of all the right keywords, and then they would actually white out in the font color so that the human couldn't tell that it was whited out, right? And then so it passed the AI filter, and it made it to the recruiter, and the recruiter was like, hey, it looks like you're qualified because obviously, our AI said you made it. But it turned out that if you actually read the description, the experience, it doesn't match at all, right? Well, that was a funny little thing. I'm sure it's gotten a little smarter in terms of screening and how AI applies to both candidates and the businesses themselves. But I thought that was a little fun little exercise. Got to try that sometime to jailbreak AI, if you will.
That's fun.
Well, we're at essentially the tail end of the episode. Eduardo, thank you for jumping on Anyreach Roundtable. Just for our audience, if they want to find you, how would they do that? How would they find Harpoon?
Well, I thank you and the audience, of course. You guys can find me at LinkedIn, of course. That's Eduardo Mendes with an S. Eduardo Harpoon, you can search the way it pleases you the most, I guess. And obviously, you can search for www.harpoon-consulting.com.
Got it. Well, awesome. Thanks again, Eduardo, for joining on, and appreciate you being here.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks.